As a Scrum Master, how can you help your team understand the right amount of work they need to commit to during a sprint? Oh, how can you help your team avoid spilling over? How can you help your team avoid scope creep? How can you help your team improve on their velocity? All of these questions can be answered by leveraging your understanding or the knowledge on how to interpret the velocity chart. So, what is the velocity chart in the first place? I'm going to illustrate that and how you can use the velocity chart to effectively help your team to commit to the right amount of work. The velocity chart indicates the amount of work your team actually committed to, and at the end of the day, also indicate the amount of work that they completed. Now, let's look at velocity like this. When we say a car is capable of running, let's say, 60 miles an hour, now the ability for that car to maintain that velocity depends on who is driving. If you have a super expert driver behind the wheel, they have the capability to run above 60 miles per hour, which is the average speed. Now, if you have someone that's a bit slower, not really just started driving, they can actually go below the 60 miles per hour. So when we talk about the velocity chart, it's more on the amount of work that your team is completing and how do you read this chart. Now, this chart includes the number of story points. So let's say we have about 70 here and we have like 50 here, we have about 30, we have about 10 here. So this indicate the story point, and this axis is going to indicate the sprint, right? So you obviously always see two different charts. I'm going to use two pens to illustrate. Let's say that we have our first sprint right here, which is sprint 1. Let's call it S1. And we started with, let's say, we committed to about 55 story points. Now, the second line always show you what you ended up with. Let's say we finish about this number of story points. And we go to sprint 2, assuming a sprint is the 2-week period. Let's say we committed to about 70 story points and ended up finishing divide the color difference. I just want to do some illustration here. On sprint 3, we commit to, let's say, about 51 right here. And we finish about, let's say, 30. Now, these are 3 different sprints. Obviously, you need at least 3 to 4 sprints to give an effective measure. Now, the average velocity is how much work your team is capable of completing, which means you're going to add S1 plus S2 plus S3, and you take the average. So the average here, let's say here it's about 45, plus here about 50, plus here about 30. So 45 plus 50, that's 95, plus 30, that is about 125 divided by 3. 125 divided by 3 is going to give you somewhere around 42, right? Let's say, okay, 42. So your average velocity is 42, which means that if your team commit to averagely 42 points, then they are capable of finishing it. Now, how does this help you to subsequently plan your sprint as a Scrum Master? Based on history, we have been able to see that the team can effectively complete 42 story points in a sprint. This helps you to further plan in a way that this become an average. So advisably, with this number, always go look around 10 or plus or minus 10, which means that if your team is committing above 52, which is somewhere right here, you need to kind of warn them and tell them, hey, look, based on our track record, we have not actually been able to complete above 52. So if you're going ahead to commit to 70, there's high level that we're going to speed over. Right. Now, if your team is committing below, if I go below 32 right here, they are under committing, which means that they are actually below the line. So you realize that when we look at this range, it actually covers what our team is capable of completing. Now, this is good enough for the team. So the velocity actually helps you to guide your team on what they should commit to. Should you actually limit your team from taking more than 42 or less than 42? No, it's a guide. Remember, you are a facilitator. You're not a dictator. So your goal is to advise your team and coach them on the right thing to do and give them examples or give them guidelines on why maybe taking more than 42 plus 10, taking more than 52 might be a really danger to them, and why taking less than less than 32 might be them not really committing. So with these, you can have an idea on what your team is capable of doing and how you can continuously guide your team. So in order to help your team commit to the right amount of work, you need to understand the average velocity and always give like a plus or minus 10 to guide them to say, if the average velocity is 42, kind of give about 10 story points. If they're committing above 52, it's already a red sign, a red flag. Not that they cannot complete it. They can complete it, but they should be very conscious about what is happening. If they're committing below 10 point below, it means, oh, there's kind of some fear for failure. So that is how you can use the velocity chart to effectively guide your team. Right. And based on this, you can learn over time how the team is completing their work. And you can use this information to predict how you can gradually start pushing them to do more by looking at what are their best sprint with very high velocity like this one. What happened that they were able to complete so much velocity, so much story point. So it's about learning process. There's definitely no magic. And most of this stuff you need to learn them with hands-on experience, which is why if you're looking for a community where you can actually practice and become a Scrum Master, kind of just send out a text. I'm interested in learning more of Scrum practice, and we'll tell you what exactly you need to be part of our community. And make sure that you share, you like, you subscribe, follow our page. We are committed to giving you tips that help you to become an effective Scrum Master. We'll see you in the next video.